You know the MongoDB server, the database one. It's time to study MySQL. Actually, maybe you feel like different from other courses because they're standard one. They normally talk about the MySQL first and then the NoSQL later. But because we, as one that we already know the data frame, the one that we always analyze the data, not store the data, you will see the difference after this. So we start our course with the MySQL one, the MongoDB one, and then now we shift into the MySQL, the SQL one, the standard database that used like for very long times, many years, I think, or more than 30s, I think. Okay, so next, what is the SQL? Actually, it is the relational database. The idea is in the database, there are many tables, and all of them must be well structured. It's different, totally different from the document-oriented one in the one that you studied, you know, from NoSQL. But the structured one, what is the structure? You have to define the structure first. You have to create the table first. And then in your table, how many fields do you want? And what kind of field in the table that you want to store? So you have to define it first. And then that is the structure. You have to define the type of the data also. You have to define if you have a key, you have to define it. Yeah. So you have to store data in the tables, and you have to design the relationships between the data, use the keys. And then if you want to use or like do the CRUD operations, create, read, update, and delete, you have to use the SQL, the structured query language. And you must, as I told you before, you have to use their predefined structures. You have to think about the fields. So it's different. It's different from the one that you studied using the MongoDB, the NoSQL one. That one you don't know. You don't know the type of the field. You don't know the values of the field. You can add some field later in other documents. So it's like different in that way. I show the SQL and the MongoDB one. The term SQL that I use here is the SQL in the general, not only for NoSQL one that we not only for MySQL that we will use in this class, but it's general. So for the SQL, you can see that the first one is table based, but for the MongoDB, it is the document based. For the most important thing for the MongoDB is you have to store the documents in the collections, right? In the database. But in SQL, you have to define the table. You have to define the column first. How many columns do you want and what kind of data type that you have to use for each column. And then you can store the data in the rows and row records and records. And all of them are fixed schema. If you already define the table, you have to follow to the schema. Because if you change later, you have to modify a lot of things. Okay. But for the MongoDB, no need to use the fixed schema. You can change, you can add the key in some document, you can omit the key, you can add the new key. It can be like the nested structure or so. So it's flexible. But what kind of application, the task that we should use the SQL? Actually, this is the one like, yeah, there are many type, many kind of data in the same database, in the same application. You can think that it's complex and it's well structured. But for the MongoDB, it's best for the big data that flexible. Okay, real-time application, some data miss, some data has null, and you feel free, free to insert them because you insert using the document style. Okay, and it's very well for the unstructured data. And if you want to join other keys, other tables from the values from other tables, you have to define the key and join the table. But normally, if you use MongoDB, everything must be embedded in the document. I think you don't. I think you don't see any example yet, but I will show you the examples of this usage later. The product that we use in today's server, they use like MySQL. This one is very popular because it's free, it's open source, and it's large communities. So you can get the help from other people. That is very, very important. And the one that is the commercial product is SQL Server. Oracle one, also the Oracle SQL, Postgres SQL, and SQLite. This one is the very well-known SQL product. So you can choose which one. But in our course, we use MySQL, but you can use any when you work. And all of them, you can work with the SQL structured query language. That they are same. So you must know some syntax of SQL. The reason we choose as MySQL is open source and free. Yes, free community edition, high performance, very good for the real world application. It's scalability. You can use both large or small size of applications, and it's cross platforms. You can install on any OS and any popular OS, and ease of use, simple installation, setup, management. Okay, and as I told you before, it is large community support, and it's work well with the web technologies, the one that PHP, Python, Java, and many other programming languages. So this is the reason that why we choose MySQL as the SQL server in our course. This is an example of the table. For example, I hope that you still remember the 7 timers info, the weather forecast one. For example, you have the request. The request is the one that you request to the server, to the API service. So you must generate the request ID, and once it's returned, it has some data that returned in the init time, and it has the product like the CV one and the format JSON and the data series one, right? So now you have to think about the database design, but the scope of the database design, we just introduce you something, not the whole one, because if you want to study the whole one, we need 3 or 4 weeks to understand all of the concept of the database. But you can imagine that once you request, you will get the init time. That will be very useful. You have to use that one to add to the time point to get the actual time. So that you can keep this one in the request table. And for the forecast values, this one, the forecast, everything that is the forecast, weather forecast, you must store in other tables. The reason is for each request, you have a lot of time points. This is the symbol of one too many, one request. But no worry about that. Just learn about what is the one too many one. So this one is one too many. It means that one request can map to many forecast data. For the forecast one, you can see that if you use the request ID map with the time point, it will be like the unique data also. Okay, and you can store the data of each time point here. And sometimes maybe you store it in different table. Like sometimes you request and you have to store the latitude and longitude. Okay, so this one is the structure. Some structures I just show you because I want you to feel like, okay, it's different from the MongoDB one, right? Because if you use MongoDB, this one can be stored just in the documents, right? One document is one document, one time point, something like that. And then in each time point, you can store the values. If some values miss, or if some field introduced in any time point, but not in other time point, you can use the document. But if you want to add some new field here, it's very, very difficult. Okay, so this is one example. This is another example. I hope that you can see. This one is like the tables generated from an online shopping applications. So you must have a customer here. This is the table of the customer. This one. Oh, sorry. This is the okay. This one is the again. This one is the customer. You have customer ID, name of the customer, email, and phone. And this one is the order ID, and the order ID has customer ID inside, and the order date and total price. And then this one is the product ID. You have the name, the description, the price, and stock, number of stock. And then for each order items, you have to store order item ID, and then in that record, you have to store order ID, the product ID. This is one order ID can have many product ID and the quantity and the price. So, and you have to link all of them together, like the customer ID must be here also. One customer can have more than one order. One order can have more than one order items, and in one order items can have multiple product ID. This one is an example of how can you use the SQL one. And if you want to use it the same style of the document oriented in MongoDB, for example, this one is like, okay, we start with the customer document and the product document and the other one. So you can see that you have the name of the customer. You have the name of the customer here. You have the ID of the customer, email and phone, and you have the object ID, the name, description, price, and stock. And then what you have next is the order ID. The order ID has like, okay, in this order ID you have the customer ID, order date, total price, and the list of items. Okay, so this one is in the document style. You have to keep it in three collections. And then next, this time I will change that style, the document style, into the one that we familiar with. This is a document from the previous example, and then please take a look at the data on the right side. Here is so you can see that this one is the order ID. Is the order one here, order ID, and in this order you have all information of the customer, and you have the order date, total price, and the list of items, and in each item it is a product ID, name, description, quantity, and price. So this one means one document keep a lot of things. But you may see that the different is, or the benefit of using this is different. If you store the document in this style, if a user want to change the email, if this user want to change the email, or sometimes you want to change the description or to add the description of the product, the one that you already stored won't be changed if you change it later. Can you imagine if the user use the email, once you retrieve the document that was stored before they change the email will be the old one. So it depends on the application that you want to use. In which style do you want? Like, okay, it means that here you have, if you choose this style, yes, you can store it in different collections and you can refer or link to it later. So, you will have only one data at a time. Okay, this ID must have only one description, but if you use this one, maybe the order ID or the product ID, this product ID may have different description. It depends on the application that you use. Okay, now the next video clip is how can we use the MySQL one. So we will demonstrate it again on using the Colab.